I am Javiette Samuel, and I serve as Associate Vice Chancellor in the Division of Diversity and Engagement and direct our Office of Community Engagement and Outreach. I am also adjunct associate professor in my academic home that I got 3 degrees from, the Department of Child and Family Studies. So super excited to be here. So I'm going to spend the next 20-ish minutes or so with you talking about all things community engaged scholarship, design, implementation, evaluation, and things of that nature. Because we have so little time together, it's going to be super, super high level overviews and hopefully just kind of planting some seeds and sparking your interest in the ways in which you might be able to engage outside of the 4 walls of the university. Or if you've already engaged, ways in which you might kind of elevate that. So that's essentially an overview of the session, and we will proceed from there. So why we engage, as I mentioned, not everybody has degrees from land-grant universities. So we are, of course, the state's flagship land grant. And what that means is we are always thinking about the ways in which we engage, or should be thinking about the ways in which we engage more intentionally, more deeply, more richly. The university is almost 230 years old, established in way back in the day, 1794. And then, of course, we received that land grant status shortly thereafter. And so essentially all things land grant mission, which of course you're going to be teaching, research and discovery, but also that public engagement and public outreach, that's in our DNA. Those principles have undergirded who we are, what we do, how we do what we do, and things of that nature from the very beginning of time. It absolutely informs, or should inform, our strategic plan, our departmental units and centers and things of that nature. We do it because it is important to help solve some of these grand challenges and wicked problems, quite frankly. And every single college has a way in which they can and should and might engage outside of the 4 walls of the university. We do it because the Carnegie Foundation has said that we are pretty awesome and amazing, and I agree with them. In 2015, we earned our community engagement elective designation. So that is not an award. We had to demonstrate the ways in which we are intentional, we are purposeful, we are seeking equitable partnerships and things of that nature. So we have any number of, and I'm happy to share that 50-page application with anybody that wants to see it. But these are all the reasons that we think about our role as the 21st century flagship R1 institution. And so when I say community engagement, what exactly am I talking about? So glad you asked. I absolutely subscribe to, our office does, our university does, to the Carnegie definition, because again, of all the amazing recognition that we've received from Carnegie. You can see that definition on your screen. I will not necessarily read it to you, but at the end of the day, what it is we hope to be doing is partnering with any number of institutions, organizations that you see on the screen in mutually beneficial ways. Super important, underscore that reciprocity that we hope to see, primarily because the higher education has not always seen partnerships in a collaborative and reciprocal manner. Typically, it's we are the experts, we have the alphabet soup behind our name, and so it is, we are the ones that are essentially always right. We know that that's not necessarily the case, but and should help ensure that we are communicating that to, again, whether we are connecting with, working with K-12, with local nonprofits, with other academic institutions, 2-year, 4-year, historically Black colleges, minority serving institutions, businesses, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the why. Want to move to the how. So arguably, and we have folks from, obviously this is a TLI series, so it always gets me super excited. But most people, when you think about community engagement, most people do think about, and a lot of the literature speaks to the service learning pedagogy, which I am on the service, the S designation committee. But that's part, service learning is absolutely part of it, but also community-based participatory research, action research, grassroots organizing, academic outreach. So it's all of these different ways in which we can, should, and might engage with stakeholders that are not necessarily a part of the university, but are part of the larger community. Community engagement, bullet number 3, is super important. It's absolutely essential that you think about what is it that you want to learn, what is it that you want to research, what is it that you want to help solve. And when I say you can fill in the blank, what is that you want your students to learn, and so on and so forth. And so it really is a way of doing the work, of thinking about the experiences. There are a number of theories and models that are out there. You can see some of the most prevalent on the screen, but this list is absolutely not exhaustive. It's more for illustration purposes: community embedded learning, experiential learning, and change theory, cross-cultural experiential learning. That's a tongue twister. And so these are all of the kind of frameworks and, again, ways in which we might think about the course design and what's going to undergird that. So as you think about getting started, I just heard Jason talk about, they can work with you on videos and other things. Igor also talked about his role. At the very end, I will absolutely share a little bit more about our Office of Community Engagement and Outreach. But as we think about scaling engagement to online courses, to distance education, one of the very first things that you'll want to do is consider the course that you might have that community engagement in. And those courses might be everything from a 100 or 200 level course to a 400 level, and maybe even a graduate course. So it really will depend on, again, what those learning objectives are, what it is that you want students to be able to gain and glean from the experience. Once that is decided, you'll want to identify collaboratively a project or initiative that it seems would be mutually beneficial for students, certainly for UT, but also for the particular organization, entity, nonprofit, whoever it is that you might be working with. There's a lot to consider in terms of that organization. So thinking about the needs of the organization, if they have capacity, if this engagement will be, while the course might be taught purely from a distance, maybe the engagement will be in person. That hybrid model is very, very popular. And again, you'll see a lot of the literature really point to even higher ed institutions that are completely online degree programs. You will see an awful lot of that work, especially in clinical programs like nursing and often social work and so on and so forth. But thinking about all of that will help guide. It'll kind of be your roadmap guide, help you kind of think about what it is you might do. I mentioned the S designation earlier, but there are also 2 other designations. R is for research and the N is for internship. And so S and R is where I'm going to spend most of my time, because again, I'm on the S committee, and I know Virginia Stormer would be happy to help, and all of us on the committee will help you kind of think through the S designation. Maybe it's rigorous. It's very rigorous. If you have that designation, there's super high expectations in terms of the level and the quality of engagement, in terms of the level and quality of reflection and of writing, of again, helping to ensure that in fact students understand why we're employing this experiential learning format, help understand how it absolutely reinforces theory and concepts that they're learning in the classroom, help them to improve their own teachers. So a lot goes into it on the front end. There's high expectations on the back end. But what I'll also say is maybe you start out with, and our office again is happy to help you with that, and so is Virginia Stormer. But maybe you start out with an idea, a smaller scale project before actually going for the S designation. These designations were part of our QEP, Quality Enhancement Plan, that no longer exists, kind of sunsetted a couple years ago, but we are still moving forward with many tenets of that plan because it was super important, and that did come out of the provost office and the TLI unit. You'll definitely, again, whether there's a designation, whether you want to pilot, try something out, is making sure that there are a lot of opportunities for that critical thinking and higher order reasoning and thinking that we, again, hope that we will see in our students as they matriculate through the university. The learning part of service, so often what people are doing is just the service part. Makes sense. We are the volunteers as a state. That's the university's mascot. But as it relates to this particular topic and the way in which I am thinking about it and presenting it to you, really want to focus on the learning of it all. And so that reflection is absolutely, again, positively critical. I think there are opportunities, kind of tying in bullet 3 and bullet 6, there are opportunities to leverage technology depending on, again, what the project might look like, if the community even has technological capacity. So what we know is that often in rural communities, and when I say rural, I don't necessarily mean 2 or 3 hours from here. There are bordering counties, Scott and others that border Knox County, and there are also places within our own county that do not have broadband access. And so as we think about how we do what we do, taking all of that into consideration, and when it's appropriate, being able to leverage that. Again, I'll go back to kind of community size and needs as we think about proximity to said community. Maybe there's absolutely a need. I do know a lot of our faculty, one, are based in Nashville. So we have nursing faculty and social work faculty in Nashville. We might have some of our colleagues in the meeting today, but even if you're here, the community that you might want to work with might be 100 miles away or somewhere that you can't readily get to as easily, particularly knowing that our students might be anywhere. They might not even be in the state, right? And so really thinking about how we might leverage that technology. The student preparation piece is monumental. Ensuring that we do no harm, that before students go out, that they are trained appropriately is very important. And we provide a lot of that training in our Office of Community Engagement and Outreach, definitely communicating those expectations early and often. Communication, my light just went out of my office, just a second. I don't want y'all to feel like I'm presenting in the dark or sharing with you in the dark, but making sure that we are very clear on those time commitments, on the guidelines, making sure that they understand the mission, vision, and values of the organization. I tell you, this could get a little tricky, more so when students are allowed to identify their own organization that they want to work with. So for faculty, I would submit that it will be super important for you to also have those conversations and develop those relationships with the particular organization that you might want to work with, or certainly have early conversations about maybe partnering with, understanding those partnership guidelines, helping to ensure that there's equity and shared governance in the process. I kind of opened up with often nonprofits report that the university, that faculty kind of come with their own agenda and are not really thinking about the needs of the organization and how we really can enhance their mission, their cause, and things of that nature. So making sure that those things are in place. Here's just a nice graphic that I like to use, which sums up pretty much what I have said just visually, because I am super visual. But as we, again, think about whatever that potential research question is or issue that we're trying to solve, thinking about the ways in which we connect. We might have those organizations serving in an advisory capacity. Again, this could be in an online, in-person, or a hybrid model. We might have them helping as we think about kind of proof of concept, and if it's research-based inquiry, what that means and looks like. The fourth and very last column is super huge, because one of the other things that I often hear is that, wow, we worked with this course or this faculty member on a project, and whether it was grant funded or not, we don't know what the outcomes are. So making sure that we are disseminating that information accurately back to that target population that we have been working with is super huge. This is just another kind of visual of how I think about a community engagement team that includes faculty, students, and absolutely community members. Sometimes it's easier to do this in a seminar type course or in a smaller course, opposed to a course where you have maybe 40 or 30 undergraduates, for example. But really, again, kind of thinking about what is the problem we're trying to solve here, prototyping some solutions, having this broad identification of a stakeholder base. So you'll see the entire cycle 1 through 7, and it just kind of continues to perpetuate and ideally help us address some of these grand challenges. So as we think about best practices in community engagement, there are any number in the literature, sometimes called different things. It essentially boils down to the 7 that you see on my screen, and I'll just highlight those really quickly to help ensure that we have a little time for Q&A. Cultural humility is probably at the absolute top, certainly at the top of my list, and arguably at the top of most scholars' list. This really is about exploring and seeking to understand, accept, and appreciate folks that are from different backgrounds, that have different beliefs and values. I use humility opposed to competence, because competence to me suggests that we have arrived. I think that we are always learning and seeking to understand diversity of thought and of customs and roles and things of that nature. And so, it really is an opportunity to kind of check some of the biases that we might have. It is about looking at the ways in which communities have strengths in their own right, and the ways in which we might, again, help to work collaboratively as we seek to, whether it's educational gaps, wealth gaps. I don't know where everybody is coming from, but most of the time, whether it's law, political science, business, and everything in between, community engaged scholars tend to have an equity and a justice lens, tend to have a focus on, again, the ways in which we try to help everyone certainly level up and be respected and valued, which leads me to this next topic, which is inclusion, mutually beneficial and reciprocal. We have to make sure that it's a win-win situation, and that win-win doesn't mean 50-50. It doesn't mean that everybody gets exactly the same thing, but it absolutely means that both sides benefit. And if you don't take much else away from this session, I really want to focus on inclusion being not just about participation. What we're really talking about, again, is drawing on those community-based experiences and ensuring our own transparency and motivations, making sure that it's an iterative process, because often based on, reports and data and literature, the outsider, those folks outside of the academy don't necessarily view it as an iterative process. So this is absolutely a best practice. And bridging language barriers is important. That is not necessarily a ELL type of language barrier, but when we use certain words in university scientific jargon, does it mean the same thing to the population that we are working with? So making sure that we are super intentional about language and ensuring that folks are on the same page. I've talked about this some, but co-generating, translating, and applying that knowledge. So recognizing the community assets and those strengths, co-creating activities, agendas, and also observing your role as a learner, right? And so when I was trained here 30 years ago in a PhD program, there was this very kind of strict separation of scientist / researcher and your sample population. This model is very much infused, it's engaged, it's not neutral, right? It is recognizing of some of the issues, challenges, and problems, and being okay with recognizing that as we work to solve some of these problems. And then most assuredly, the assessment and evaluation piece. So this is going to be both for the organization that you're working with, but also for your students, thinking about how they assess, your syllabus, how have you met your objectives, but also how have we met the objectives of the project that we were working on. The same with, making improvements and some of those types of things. I listed cost here because not even in a service learning course, not everything is free. And I wouldn't give you all this great information and expect you to explore if you've never infused community engaged scholarship or community engaged mentor or academic outreach in a course. And so I just I'm going to skip that one right quick. I'm going to just talk to you a little bit again about our Office of Community Engagement and Outreach. So we are here to support faculty, staff, students, and external stakeholders as we seek to not just develop, but maintain these mutually beneficial partnerships that I've mentioned. We absolutely provide resources, and some of that is consultation and advisement, but some of that is actually money. So we do work with all 11 colleges and other units, as I just mentioned. And I want to spend a little bit of time here. We have a current request for proposals that's open until September the 15th. So we have challenge grants for up to 3,000, sponsorship for up to 2,000, and engagement and outreach mini grants for up to 1,000. So if something that you've heard or that you wanted to do sparks your interest and you want to, I know there's a time that TLI really had a lot of focus on course redesign. Maybe you don't want to completely redesign it, but just want to have a kind of academic outreach or community engagement portion, and maybe that requires a little bit of seed funding. So here are your opportunities to apply for those funds. I love to show this slide here. It's from a faculty member over on the Ag campus who thought he was just kind of starting a small scale project related to broadband access in 4 rural communities across the state. So he took hotspots, he and students partnered with public libraries, and they put hotspots in the library and were able to leave their surveys there in these small counties and collect data to help understand better the needs of rural communities as it relates to technology and the digital divide. Well, he got a $1,000 mini grant. So that previous slide, right? He got that $1,000 mini grant. He leveraged that project and got a community engagement seed grant from the Office of Research for $15,000. Then the one UT grant for $50,000. Later, the ARC grant $75,000, NSF grant for $150,000. And this slide, he just told me last week he's gotten another $250,000 grant, all from this fairly small project and course that he was working on. So this always gets me super, super excited. So again, as you think about maybe infusing community engagement, whatever that means, it looks like for your discipline, if there is a need for financial resources, we are here. We also have a community engagement academy. It's a 6-week intensive for early career faculty, postdocs, and doctoral students. Joseph was in the audience. I think he's still with us. He was in our inaugural cohort. He's a doc student here on campus, and I believe found it to be very beneficial and has been able to apply many of those concepts and theories and frameworks to his Engaged Scholarship. We also are super excited to roll out Corky, which is a community university research collaborative initiative that's going to be a way to describe all the ways that faculty are engaging with the university and hopefully be able to encourage some multidisciplinary initiatives. And then finally, we have the Engagement and Outreach Conference, which is October the 3rd and 4th, right here in the Student Union. That'll be an opportunity for you to hear about a lot of faculty that have community engaged projects, whether that's in the context of a course or if it's academic outreach. It is free. It is the first time that we have been in person in 2 years. So we are super excited about that. The link is just right in that bottom bullet. And I hope that you will tell us your story. If you have an amazing story, we want to hear about it. We have an ArcGIS interactive map that you can click on each of those stick pins and have an idea of the type of engagement that we are doing. And again, many of those are student-led projects or service-learning projects or research engagement projects. And so we'd love to hear from you. Arts and sciences, you can see that third kind of bar graph has the highest amount of projects. It makes sense because they're by far the largest college, but regardless of whichever college you are in, we are super excited to hear about all the ways that you might and your students are engaging. And so I mentioned again that we are a resource. Of course, OIT is a resource, TLI, and we partner quite a bit with the library.